The moment that should have been an execution. Everyone in the galaxy believed humans were monsters. So when Commander Thalara opened her eyes on the battlefield and saw a human soldier standing over her with a rifle in his hands, she knew her life was over. But what happened next would shake the entire galaxy. Because instead of pulling the trigger, the human did something no alien had ever seen before. He helped her. A battlefield of silence. The war had ended only minutes ago. Smoke drifted slowly across the broken land like ghosts searching for bodies. Pieces of destroyed machines lay scattered everywhere, their metal frames still glowing from recent explosions. Commander Thalara of the Virex Dominion lay on the ground among them. Her armor was cracked. The glowing energy veins running through it flickered weakly like fading stars. Pain spread through her body with every breath. The sky above her was bright blue. Too peaceful for a place where thousands had just died. Her four-fingered hand slowly reached for the broken hilt of her plasma blade beside her. Even dying, a Virex warrior never surrendered. Footsteps approached. Heavy ones. Human. Her eyes focused through the smoke. A tall figure appeared through the haze, armored in grey metal plating scratched from battle. The visor of his helmet reflected her broken body on the ground. The human raised his rifle. Thalara closed her eyes. This was how it ended. The unexpected choice. The shot never came. Seconds passed. Then 10. Slowly, she opened one eye. The human was still standing there. But instead of aiming his weapon, he lowered it. What a mess, the human muttered. Thalara blinked in confusion. Humans were supposed to be brutal conquerors. That was what every alien civilization believed. Stories about them filled military academies across the galaxy. Relentless. Merciless. Unstoppable. Yet this one just sighed like a tired worker at the end of a long day. He crouched down beside her. Yeah, you're definitely not having a good afternoon. Her voice came out rough and weak. Kill me, human. The soldier tilted his head. Nah. Thalara stared at him. Nah, she repeated. Yeah, he said casually. Not really in the mood. A strange human. The human reached up and removed his helmet. Thalara expected the face of a monster. Instead she saw someone who looked young. A thin scar crossed his cheek. His dark hair was messy with sweat and dust. His green eyes looked more curious than hostile. He studied her wounds carefully. Name's Marcus Hale, he said. She growled softly. Why tell me that? Marcus shrugged. Seemed polite. Polite. The word sounded absurd on a battlefield. You should kill me, Thalara said again. That's what soldiers do. Marcus scratched the back of his head. Yeah, sometimes. Then he pulled a small metal cylinder from his belt and tossed it toward her. The object rolled across the dirt and stopped near her hand. Thalara narrowed her eyes. What is this? Medical gel. You expect me to believe that? No, Marcus admitted. But if I wanted you dead, I wouldn't bother poisoning you. She hesitated. Her training screamed that this was a trap. But the pain in her side grew worse with every second. Finally she grabbed the canister and opened it. Cool blue gel poured onto the wound. The pain faded almost instantly. Her eyes widened. You helped me. Marcus gave a small smile. Yeah, humans do that sometimes. The galaxy's greatest misunderstanding. Thalara struggled to sit up. Why? She demanded. You are the enemy. Marcus looked around the battlefield. Pretty sure everyone here was someone's enemy. She frowned. That is not how war works. Marcus leaned against a broken piece of metal. Maybe that's the problem. She studied him carefully. This human made no sense. Every intelligence report about humanity described them as chaotic predators. A species that conquered systems through overwhelming force. Yet this soldier spoke calmly to a wounded enemy commander. You risk punishment, she said. Marcus laughed. Oh, I passed the point of worrying about punishment a long time ago. Explain. He gestured around the battlefield. My squad's gone. Your army's gone. This planet's basically a giant junkyard now. His expression softened slightly. Killing one more person isn't going to fix any of that. The real danger. Before Thalara could answer, a sharp mechanical sound echoed across the valley. Marcus immediately turned his head. Oh, that's bad. What is it? She asked. A small flying drone rose above the ridge nearby. Its red scanning beam swept across the battlefield. Dominion Recon Unit. If it detected them, reinforcements would arrive within minutes. Marcus grabbed his rifle and fired. A single shot. The drone exploded in midair. But Marcus didn't relax. Yeah, he muttered. That definitely sent a signal before it died. Thalara understood instantly. Dominion patrol ships would soon arrive. And they would kill both of them. You should leave, she told him. Marcus shook his head. Too late for that. He looked at her again. Then extended his hand. Come on. She stared at it. You cannot be serious. Pretty serious. You want me, an enemy commander, to escape with you? Marcus shrugged. Better than dying separately. A decision that changed everything. For several seconds Thalara didn't move. Helping an enemy was unthinkable. Fighting beside one was even worse. Yet the human waited patiently, his hand still extended. The sound of distant engines echoed in the sky. Reinforcements were coming. Finally she took his hand. Marcus pulled her to her feet. She almost collapsed, but he caught her quickly. Easy there, he said. You are very irritating, she muttered. Yeah, I hear that a lot. Together they began moving toward the distant mountains where Marcus's small scout ship waited. Behind them, the battlefield burned. Above them, warships approached. And neither of them realized yet that this strange decision would soon change the fate of two entire civilizations. Because sometimes the most dangerous weapon humans possess is compassion. The small scout ship roared as it lifted from the canyon floor, its engines shaking the rocky walls around them. Dust exploded outward in thick clouds while the ship struggled into the sky. Inside the cockpit, Marcus Hale gripped the controls tightly. Warning lights blinked everywhere. The ship was barely functional. Thalara sat behind him, holding her wounded side while watching the human carefully. You are a terrible pilot, she said coldly. Marcus glanced over his shoulder. First of all, rude. The ship tilted suddenly to the side. And second of all, this thing is basically a flying toolbox. Outside the window, 3 Dominion fighter ships appeared in the sky. Their engines glowed like burning stars as they accelerated toward the human vessel. Thalara's eyes widened. Those are Virex interceptors. Marcus sighed. Of course they are. You cannot outrun them. Yeah, I figured that out. Missile locks screamed through the cockpit alarm system. Marcus immediately pushed the control stick forward. The scout ship dove toward a canyon below. The fighters followed. Missiles streaked through the air behind them. The explosions shook the entire canyon as rocks shattered and fell around them. Thalara grabbed the seat beside her. You will crash. Marcus grinned. That's actually part of the plan. The ship suddenly rolled sideways, flying dangerously close to the canyon wall. The fighters struggled to follow. Missiles smashed into the cliffside instead of the scout ship, creating huge clouds of debris. Marcus laughed. See, humans are great at making bad ideas work. But Thalara was not laughing. She stared at the human. You are insane. Marcus shrugged. Maybe. Another missile alarm screamed. Marcus quickly pressed several buttons. A metal panel opened under the ship. Several small metal cubes dropped into the canyon. Thalara frowned. What are those? Decoys. Seconds later the cubes exploded into bright flashes of light and electromagnetic noise. The enemy missiles immediately turned toward the decoys instead of the ship. The explosions lit the canyon like lightning. The interceptors pulled away briefly to regain lock. Marcus took the opportunity. He slammed the engines to maximum power. The scout ship shot forward through the canyon like a bullet. Behind them, the fighters struggled to keep up. For a moment, the cockpit was quiet except for the rumble of the engines. Thalara slowly spoke. "Human. I have fought many species in war." Marcus nodded while focusing on the controls. "Sounds fun. No species fights like this." He smirked. "What do you mean?" She studied him carefully. "You do not fight for domination. You fight to survive." Marcus was quiet for a moment. "Yeah," he finally said. "That sounds about right." The radar suddenly beeped again. More ships appeared on the scanner. Not 3. 10. Marcus leaned back in his seat. "Well, that's unfortunate." Thalara stared at the screen. "That is a Dominion strike squad. They must really want you back." "They want me dead." Marcus raised an eyebrow. "Wait, seriously?" Thalara nodded slowly. "If they know I survived the battle, they will eliminate me." Marcus frowned. "Your own people?" "Yes." "Why?" She hesitated. Then she spoke quietly. "Because I know something they do not want revealed." Marcus glanced back at her. "Now that sounds interesting." She leaned forward. "The Dominion leadership has been lying to the galaxy." Marcus laughed softly. "Yeah, governments do that. This is different." Her glowing eyes darkened. "They told every civilization that humans are violent conquerors." Marcus nodded. "Pretty common rumor." "It was propaganda." He looked confused. "What?" "They feared humanity long before the war began." Marcus tilted his head. "Why?" Thalara pointed to the damaged control panel. "Because humans think differently." Marcus chuckled. Understatement of the century. But she continued seriously. "Every other intelligent species in the galaxy evolved in stable environments. Predictable worlds. Predictable dangers." Marcus slowly began to understand. Earth wasn't like that. "No," she said. "Your world was chaos. Storms. Earthquakes. Ice ages. Predators. Disease. War. The human race survived all of it. And every time they adapted. Every time they improved. Every time they became stronger." She looked directly at him. "To the Dominion, that made humanity the most dangerous species in existence." Marcus leaned back in his chair. "Wow. Your leaders never told you this?" "Nope." "Then they truly fear you." Marcus looked out the cockpit window toward the approaching fighters. "Well, that explains the whole invasion thing." The scanner suddenly beeped again. But this time Marcus smiled. "Oh, look at that." Thalara leaned forward. "What?" Marcus pointed at the radar. "Friends." 3 human frigates dropped out of hyperspace above the planet. Their massive metal frames glowed under the sunlight. The Dominion fighters immediately changed course to intercept them. Marcus relaxed slightly. "See? Told you I had a plan." "You did not mention that." "Yeah, because technically it wasn't a plan." The human ships opened fire. Bright beams of energy streaked across space. 2 Dominion fighters exploded instantly. The rest scattered. Marcus slowly guided the scout ship upward toward the human fleet. Thalara stared at the approaching warships. She had studied human technology before, but seeing it in action was different. The ships were not elegant like alien vessels. They were not smooth or beautiful. They were thick, layered, reinforced, every part designed to survive damage, just like the species that built them. Marcus spoke calmly. "Welcome to the human side of the war." Thalara looked at him. "You still trust me?" He shrugged. "Not really." "Then why bring me here?" Marcus smiled slightly. "Because sometimes the best way to win a war is to understand the enemy." She stared at him. "No," she said quietly. "You misunderstand." Marcus frowned. "What do you mean?" Thalara looked out the window at the human fleet. "I am no longer your enemy." Marcus raised an eyebrow. "That's a big change." Her voice became serious. "The Dominion is preparing something far worse than this war." Marcus leaned forward. "What kind of something?" Her glowing eyes reflected the approaching stars. A weapon designed to destroy entire star systems. Marcus sat silently. Then he whispered one word. "Well, crap." And far away in deep space, the Dominion fleet was already preparing it. The human fleet floated silently above the planet like a wall of steel. From the bridge of the frigate Resolute, Commander Marcus Hale stood beside the wide observation window. Stars burned across the darkness of space while technicians rushed across the control room behind him. Thalara stood nearby, watching everything carefully. She had seen many alien warships in her life. But human ships felt different. They were not built to impress. They were built to survive. Thick armor plates, layered shields, backup systems on top of backup systems. Even the control room looked more like a workshop than a command center. Wires ran across the walls. Spare parts sat in metal containers. Tools were scattered everywhere. Humans believed one simple rule. If something breaks, fix it. Thalara looked at Marcus. "You fight war like engineers." Marcus smirked slightly. "That's because half our soldiers used to be engineers." Before she could reply, an alarm echoed across the bridge. A young officer turned toward Marcus. "Commander, we are detecting a massive energy spike in deep orbit." Thalara immediately stepped forward. Her glowing eyes widened. "It has begun." Marcus looked at her. "The weapon?" She nodded slowly. "Yes." The officer expanded a holographic display in the center of the room. Everyone fell silent. Far beyond the planet, a gigantic Dominion structure was forming. It looked like a black star unfolding. Metal rings rotated slowly around a glowing core of blue energy. Even from this distance, the power radiating from it was terrifying. One officer whispered, "My God." Marcus crossed his arms. "So that's their big secret." Thalara spoke quietly. "It is called the Starbreaker." Marcus raised an eyebrow. "That name doesn't sound friendly." "It is not." She pointed to the glowing core. "That reactor is designed to overload a star." The entire room went silent. Marcus blinked. "You're telling me that thing can destroy a sun?" "Yes." "And they plan to use it here?" "Yes." Marcus scratched his head slowly. "Well, that's a problem." The officers stared at him. "Commander," one said nervously, "that weapon can wipe out everything in this system." Marcus nodded. "Yep." Another officer spoke. "Our weapons cannot reach it from this distance." Marcus leaned over the control table, thinking. Humans were famous for many things across the galaxy. Strength, aggression, determination. But the one thing alien civilizations feared most was human creativity under pressure. Marcus suddenly smiled. "I have an idea." The officers groaned. "That sentence always scares us," one muttered. Marcus pointed at the hologram. "How stable is that reactor?" Thalara answered immediately. "Not very." "Meaning?" "It requires perfect balance of energy fields." Marcus's smile widened. "So if something disturbed those fields, the entire weapon would collapse." Marcus turned toward the crew. "All right, everyone. Time for a little human engineering." The officers quickly gathered around the display. Marcus began giving orders. "We can't destroy the weapon directly, but we can break it." He zoomed the hologram closer. "See those rotation rings?" The officers nodded. "They stabilize the reactor." Marcus pointed to several small points around the structure. if we hit these exact spots with synchronized EMP bursts. The officer beside him gasped. The rings will lose alignment. Thalara finished the thought. And the reactor will destabilize itself. Marcus snapped his fingers. Exactly. But Commander, another officer said, we don't have enough ships to hit all points at once. Marcus grinned. Who said we need ships? The room looked confused. Marcus tapped the console again. Deploy the drone swarms. The officers looked at each other. Every drone. Every single one. Thousands of human drones launched from the fleet moments later. Small. Fast. Cheap. Individually, they were harmless. But together they formed a storm of metal moving through space. On the bridge, Thalara watched in amazement. You are attacking a super weapon, with drones. Marcus nodded proudly. Yep. That is insane. Marcus shrugged. Maybe. The drone swarm rushed toward the Starbreaker. Dominion defense cannons immediately opened fire. Hundreds of drones exploded. But thousands more continued forward. Human strategy had always been simple. If one tool fails, send 10 more. The drones reached the weapons rings. Marcus counted quietly. 3, 2, 1, now. A massive pulse of electromagnetic energy erupted from the drones. The Starbreaker's rings suddenly shook. Energy inside the reactor core fluctuated wildly. Dominion ships scrambled around the weapon, trying to stabilize it. But the damage was already spreading. The glowing blue core began flashing dangerously. On the Dominion command ship, alarms screamed across every console. The Starbreaker was collapsing. Back on the human bridge, officers stared at the screen. Commander, it's working. Marcus nodded calmly. Of course it is. The reactor reached critical instability. For a brief moment, the entire structure glowed like a newborn star. Then, the Starbreaker exploded. A massive wave of light spread across space as the superweapon tore itself apart. Dominion ships scattered in panic. Debris from the destroyed weapon drifted slowly through the void. Silence returned to space. On the human bridge, no one spoke for several seconds. Then the crew erupted in cheers. Thalara stared at the destroyed weapon in disbelief. You defeated it. Marcus leaned against the console. Yeah. With drones. Yep. She looked at him with a strange expression. You truly are the most unpredictable species in the galaxy. Marcus smiled. We hear that a lot. Far away, surviving Dominion ships began retreating. The war had changed in a single moment. Thalara looked out at the stars. For centuries the Dominion feared humanity. Marcus nodded. Guess they were right. She shook her head slowly. No. Marcus looked at her. What do you mean? She spoke softly. They feared the wrong thing. Marcus raised an eyebrow. What should they have feared? Thalara looked at the human crew celebrating behind them. The fact that humans refused to give up. Marcus chuckled. Yeah, that's kind of our thing. And across the galaxy, news of the battle spread quickly. Alien civilizations watched the recordings in disbelief. A species that defeated a star-destroying weapon. With creativity, improvisation, and stubborn determination. From that day forward the galaxy learned a new lesson. Humans were not the monsters they feared. But if you threatened them, they would find a way to survive. No matter the odds. Because when humanity stands together, even the stars are not safe.